Hey guys, Chris here. Tonight we have a story from one of our viewers. He grew up in the Honey Island swamp of southern Mississippi, Louisiana, as well as along the Pearl River. And he went on a camping trip, had quite an experience, very frightening. And also, I'm going to be camping out here somewhere tonight. Not even sure where. That's next. So I am just getting settled in my tent here, and this is really a warm tent once you get that stove going. So I am having to remove most of my jackets and things. Got lots of layers, but it's probably going to be about 25, 30 tonight, somewhere in that range, and pretty chilly. But what a really nice cozy tent, canvas, and I got these big pockets around it and windows, and it's an old school canvas tent. It's really heavy, but it's really solid, a solid tent. So, and the stove works great. I love this little stove here. And you can cook on the top of it, and that's what we're going to do when we're done with our story tonight, is cook on the stove here. And I got my specialty gourmet burgers, backcountry burgers, so that's coming up. And tonight's beer is Mammoth Brewing Company from Mammoth Lakes, California. We have the Golden Trout Ale, and that is a German style ale. So that's going to be really tasty. And that is a big one too. And it says pack it in, pack it out. I really appreciate that. Big label on the side there telling you to pick your stuff up when you're all done with it. So, and that is a really clear golden ale. Look at that. Wow. All right, let's give it a test here. Wow, that's really tasty. It's got a non-bitter aftertaste, kind of almost a bubbly champagne-ish taste to it. It's really smooth. So, Golden Trout Ale. Okay, so our story comes to us from one of our viewers. His name is Thomas. And Thomas grew up in South Mississippi, right down by the Gulf. He grew up along the Pearl River. He literally lived on a home that was on a bluff overlooking the Pearl River. And the Pearl River forms the border, meanders down to the Gulf of Mexico, and forms the border between Louisiana and Mississippi. And along this river, around this southern part of Mississippi and Louisiana, is the Honey Island Swamp. And the Honey Island Swamp is from 3 to 7 miles wide and about 20 miles long. Pretty amazing, very pristine, wild swampland. There's gators down there, migratory birds, and other creatures that they don't know about very much. And one of them is called the Cajun Sasquatch. So Thomas's earliest memories growing up were of fishing and hunting with his father and close family. His father was also born and raised along the Pearl River, as had generations before him. They knew the swamp well. They knew every backwater, every fishing hole, every oxbow, every bayou in that swamp. They were of the swamp, so to speak. So this encounter takes place in 1976. Thomas had just returned home from the service. He'd been gone for 4 years. He was really happy to be home, and his good friend Nick contacted him, and he said, "Hey Thomas, let's get together and do some fishing in one of our old fishing holes and do some camping as well." And Thomas thought that was a great idea, so they got their gear together. He borrowed his dad's boat, and they launched it on the Pearl River, and they're heading north on the Pearl River to go to one of their spots and catch some catfish. It felt good to be on the water, the familiar sights, sounds, smells, just the feeling of the wind blowing through his hair, and just everything coming back to him, the familiarity. He's with his good friend Nick, and Nick and him grew up together, hunting, fishing, chasing girls, and Nick was considered one of his best friends ever. It took about 45 minutes to reach Black Creek. As they turned off of the main river onto this tributary, they noticed right away that it was lined with these pristine oak trees. And they had these huge moss-covered limbs that were hanging down, reaching down to the water. And these trees were so abundant that even during the middle of the day, this area possesses an eerie darkness. They cruised up the bayou slowly, trying to avoid snags. They found their camping spot right on the creek. Now, this time of year, that area, this backwater, is flooded because of high water stage in the river. And what happens is there's scattered islands throughout this backwater because of the high water. These islands range in size from half an acre to 5 or 6 acres. But this area is great fishing for catfish, and it's only accessible by boat. So they started setting up their camp, gathering firewood, unloading their sleeping bags, putting their sleeping pads out, getting out the cast iron skillet with the cornmeal, cooking oil, and that was about it. They did not have a tarp, tent, or anything else, just camping in nature at its best, just very basic. And that's how they liked it. So they quickly set their trot lines, baited them, and returned to camp waiting for darkness to come. Now their light for fishing consisted of a headlight that was wrapped in a piece of cardboard so they wouldn't burn their hands, and it had these 2 long wires on it that were wrapped around the posts of a car battery. This is how they did it in 1976. So after it got dark, they started catching catfish. They were having a great time. They were really tearing them up. They caught 4 3-pounders. They were happy with that, so they decided to go back to camp, start cleaning them, filleting them, cooking them. In the skillet, they added onions and potatoes. It was just amazing. It just tasted great, and they sat on the bank of the river eating this, and they were just having a great time. It's just like old memories for them. So right around 9 o'clock, they were full. The fire had died down to hot coals with a warm glow, and they were just laying there next to it, and their conversation was waning, and they were just grateful for a really good day. Now, earlier that night, when Thomas was cooking, he had gotten rid of a couple of bad potatoes and thrown them into the woods to keep the ants down around camp. So they're laying next to the fire and they're almost asleep. The fire had died down. There's just enough light to see each other. And they hear in the woods, not too far away, something moving around in the woods. And they listen. And they can hear what sounds like it's eating something. and they guess it's got to be the potato that they'd thrown out. They'd thrown out a few potatoes. And they can hear this loud crunching sound. Right away, Thomas wasn't super concerned because he thought, well, maybe a cow came down from the hills and got trapped on one of the islands after the high water came in. And they continued to listen, and they could hear it move, and they could hear it start eating another potato. Nick looks at Thomas and he says, "Are you hearing this?" And Thomas just looks back and he nods his head. The only light they have is the car headlight that's attached to the battery, and that's in the boat, and that's about 40 feet away down by the creek. They're listening again, and they can hear whatever this is coming closer to their camp. And then Thomas this time looks at Nick and he says, "Is that thing on 2 feet?" And Nick said, "Yes." As they said these words, they both sat up, and this must have startled the animal because it let out this loud growl roar. Totally startled Nick and Thomas. They could feel this vibration into their chest. They both immediately jumped up and started running for the boat. Nick was out front, and he jumped into the boat, and he got the wires wrapped around the battery and got the light shining towards shore. Thomas jumped in, and he had a 30-30 in the boat, and he chambered around into it, prepared to shoot this charging animal. This animal was just yards away, and they had the light shined on it. The bright light stopped it dead in its tracks. It stood just inside the forest, looking down at them while they were in the boat. They couldn't see it, but they could hear it breathing heavily, and not as if it was out of breath, but by the sheer volume of its lungs. Thomas also noticed it had to be nocturnal because its eyes were very sensitive to the bright light, and that was the only thing keeping it from charging them. Thomas didn't fire his weapon even though he was scared to death. He could barely make out this huge form in the brush. And he was taught at an early age not to shoot unless you know your target. And this was reinforced in the military. Whatever this was slowly started retreating back into the forest, growling as it went. And then it was quiet. They knew they couldn't leave. It was just too technical to leave at night. There was snags, down timber, trees that were in the swamp, and worst case, if they were to end up in the water, alligators. So they went back to their camp, built a big fire, and they stayed up all night long. Next morning, first light, they loaded all their gear back into the boat, and they left. Left Black Creek, got on the Pearl River, went downstream, and went home. They told almost no one. But Thomas's dad, whom they borrowed the boat from, asked them why they'd returned home early. They were going to be gone for 2 nights. So Thomas decided to tell him what happened the night before. But he did this in the presence of his uncle and his cousin. And both Thomas and Nick were accused of having overactive imaginations, and they were the brunt of a good chuckle, a joke. Even though Thomas's dad knew that Thomas was not prone to lying. Really hard. So Thomas and Nick both kept it to themselves. Thomas has told this story to just a few people outside of his family, and he always gets the same response. He's not believed. He's got nothing to compare this experience to, even though he grew up in that forest as a young boy, and as a teenager, and now as an adult. He knows every sound that's out there in the forest at night. But he started to not believe himself anymore until the second time. And that is where we end our story tonight. We got another story from Thomas coming up at some point. So the fire is going great. It's keeping me really warm. It's below 30 right now outside. I opened up the door here, and it's cold out there. So now I'm going to get some dinner going. We have 100% avocado oil spray. That is really handy because I can just spray it on. See if we can get this thing hot. I'm starting to get low on firewood, so hopefully I can pull this off. But here is my gourmet burger, and we're going to let this get hot for a minute, and then we'll put that on. Oh, that's going to work great. That is going to work wonderfully. Get this thing hot, man, and it's interesting. The higher up I go, obviously it's hotter, so the heat, when it starts to cool down here, I stand up and it's nice and warm up in the peak of this tent. Lovely. Yeah, I found a pretty cool area out in the Nevada desert here tonight, just south of Carson in the east, and I'm kind of liking this out here. It's pretty vast. As you go east of here, there's a big broad valley and then a large mountain range over there. I think it's called the Pine Nut Mountains. And there's wild horses out here, so I am looking forward to exploring more. I'm going to get on the maps, Google Earth, Google Maps, or whatever, and figure out where these roads go. And probably do some more stuff out here, so it'll be kind of fun. And as we get lots of snow up in the mountains there, the Sierra Nevada, they closed off today. I was going to head up to the Sierra this afternoon, and the clouds came in and started raining, and I think there was some snow going on up there, and I would have driven right into some snow, so I decided to try something different. Tortilla. Look at that. It looks like a taco. Alright, this is a very warm tent. Gotta say, this will work well in the snow, and I'm going to do some snow camping this winter as well, so gonna be out there. I love the new cot. Have not slept on it yet, but I can tell I'm going to like it. Yeah, I started doing these because I just didn't like all the bread. And it's kind of fun just having a tortilla burger. Backcountry burger. So this is interesting. While I was looking up Honey Island Swamp, doing some research for the story, I also found on Wikipedia Honey Island Swamp Monster. And I wasn't even looking for that. And this is what I found. It said the Honey Island Swamp Monster, also known as the Cajun Sasquatch, and in Cajun French, La Bête Noire, is an ape-like humanoid cryptid creature similar in description to Bigfoot, purported to inhabit the Honey Island Swamp in St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana, as well as Mississippi, because they're right together there on the border. It has become part of Louisiana folklore, with many swamp tour companies in the area capitalizing on its alleged existence. The creature is commonly described by alleged witnesses as a large bipedal humanoid about 7 feet tall, covered with gray hair, having yellow or red eyes and accompanied by a putrid odor. Other local names for the creature include the Louisiana Wookiee, the Thing, and there has been alleged plaster casts of footprints said to be from the creature showcasing 4 toes. Not a natural trait found in primates who possess 5, of course. Claims of the existence are generally not considered credible, including by scientists familiar with the area. Yeah, well, they don't come down there and live there very long. They just check their computers and stuff, but I don't know. Also, the first claimed sighting was in 1963 by Harlan Ford, a retired air traffic controller who had taken up wildlife photography after his death in 1980. A reel of Super 8 film showing the creature was found among his belongings. In 1974, Ford and his friend Billy Mills claimed to have found unusual footprints in the area, as well as the body of a wild boar whose throat had been gashed. Yikes. Today, the creature is still purported to inhabit the swamp and the bayous along the Pearl River. So there you go. Check that out, though. The Wikipedia, they just started talking about the Honey Island swamp monster, which is pretty much what we had our story on tonight with Thomas. So very interesting. All right, you guys, that was fun. I am going to get some rest here, check out my new cot for the next 7 hours or so, and we will see you in the morning for coffee. Good night. Good morning. It is 29 degrees. It's freezing out. It's below freezing. Oh my gosh. Slept really well in the Kelty Zero sleeping bag though. Boy, this thing is nice and warm. I heard coyotes last night. But it was a long night. God, a minute. And we got snow outside. Got a little bit of snow outside on the ground. Wow. Gotta get my coffee going.
I find you have to start with the right coffee, so I always use Folgers.
All coffee's the same, Mrs. Olson.
Oh, no. Different coffees taste different, and I think Folgers tastes best.
Why is Folgers so different?
It's specially blended.
Joe ought to like this. What's Mountain Grown?
Mountain Grown's the richest coffee there is. Try some.
Hey, that great smell coming from your coffee pot?
Uh-huh.
That's good coffee. There's one more problem.
Oh.
We're gonna have to get a bigger pot.
Get Folgers Mountain Grown coffee. You'll like the flavor.
All right, we got a new day. Beautiful valley down here. I'm gonna have to come back and check that out. Do some exploring down there. Probably do some more camping down there as well. And there's some good mountains up here with thick forests on them. Probably juniper trees. Maybe some pinyon pine up high. But probably little canyons up there, all kind of cool stuff. So, all right, you guys, thank you for watching my channel and helping me get through the night last night. It was a long night. And if you guys like stories about the strange, unexplained, and things that go bump in the night, you guys know what to do. Like and subscribe. I appreciate the comments as always. Thank you. And that is nice and warm. That is warming me up. We'll see you in the next one. Keep hiking.